Cocoa Beach is your ultimate Florida beach vacation. Pack your bags and open your mind. Adventure is calling from Orlando's closest beach. Cocoa Beach is Florida's secret gem that's got it all. It's the budget-friendly, retro-cool destination that families and surfers adore. Come soak up the sun and ride the East Coast's most famous waves. Start planning your one-of-a-kind getaway now at visitspacecoast.com. That's visitspacecoast.com.
Hello and welcome to History for Weirdos.
We're your hosts, Andrew
and Stephanie.
And each week, we're going to take you on a journey into the strange, obscure, and relentlessly entertaining corners of human history.
Now listen up, friends, because it's about to get weird.
Weirdos, welcome to episode number 65 of the History for Weirdos podcast.
Welcome back, weirdos.
Well, anyways, weirdos, before we hand it off to Stephanie here, I want to make sure that you guys have followed us on Instagram. So if you haven't done so already, make sure to go ahead and like us or do whatever you need to do on Instagram. And if you have already done that, well, thank you. You guys are awesome.
Thank you so much. Yes, we appreciate it. We appreciate all the awesome comments and messages. It keeps us motivated, so thank you. And this week I will be telling a story that is not by any means like graphic in any way, but involves some bummer subjects.
Ooh.
So I just wanted to put that out there at the start of the episode. I don't think there's any particular content warnings, but I will be sharing the story of Ona Judge, and I will just get right into it.
Okay, sounds good.
Ona Judge was a mixed-race woman who was enslaved to the Washington family.
Like George Washington.
Yep, and I wrote, yes, the Washington family, as in George Washington and his wife, Martha.
Oh my goodness.
I didn't even put this in my notes because I didn't think about it, but obviously, for those of us in the U.S., George Washington is the first president. He is considered a founding father. Who really paved the way for the ideals that this country is built on, such as freedom.
Irony. Yeah.
So this is the reason that I chose Ona's story to share this week is not because she did anything particularly weird, right? Like, it's just that I think it's unfair that these aren't stories that we were educated with, right? I don't think you were educated with.
I didn't even know she existed, to be honest, till right now.
I didn't either until I think we were in New York once and we were at a bookstore and I found a book about her.
Oh, cool.
And that's when I was like, what? So I'm going to tell her story. She's a weirdo in the good kind of way. And of course, like I said, I think this is the type of history that we're not taught and that we should be taught. So, she was with them at the family's plantation, which is the famous Mount Vernon estate.
Oh, yeah. I've been there.
Oh, yeah? And then later, after George Washington became president, she did live with them at the president's house in Philadelphia, which at the time was the nation's capital.
Yes.
As many will know, Mount Vernon is famous, and it's in the state of Virginia. It was the home of George Washington and then his wife Martha, and then it was also home to hundreds of enslaved men, women, and children who lived there under the Washington's ownership. Ona Judge eventually becomes a fugitive for fleeing from the Washingtons to find freedom, and today we will learn her story.
Ooh, nice.
Yeah. So let's go back a little bit.
Okay.
Judge was born in about 1773. Her birth record isn't clear. She was born at Mount Vernon.
So her parents are probably enslaved people as well.
I will get to that. Yeah. Her mother, Betty, was an enslaved woman, and her father was Andrew Judge, and he was a white English tailor working at the estate as an indentured servant.
Oh, okay.
Ona had 4 half-siblings. They each have different fathers. And we don't have any information to verify whether or not her mom, Betty, and her biological dad, Andrew, had a consensual relationship.
Oh, great.
I know.
And Andrew, come on, dude.
Be better. Though Ona Judge had a white father, like I said, she is born into slavery under the law called partus sequitur ventrum, which in Latin means that which is born follows the womb. So this was a legal doctrine passed in colonial Virginia in 1662.
Oh, wow.
As well as other English crown colonies in the Americas. It defined the legal status of children born in the colonies, and it specifically mandated that all children would inherit the legal status of their mothers, that which follows the womb.
Right.
As such, children of enslaved women would be born into slavery.
Oh, my God.
And we saw this in a previous episode that we did regarding the young woman who had Thomas Jefferson's children.
Sally Hemings.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Same thing with their father was literally their owner because their mother was enslaved, so they had to be enslaved. And just as a reminder, at the time, enslaved women could be, and all too frequently were, sexually assaulted by white men, and there would be zero legal ramifications for this. This was seen as 100% okay. So that is partially why we don't know if they had a consensual relationship. But back to what we do know of Ona's life, Ona probably lived with Betty in a small cabin near the mansion house. As a kid, she would have been doing simple chores, helping her mother with easy tasks in their cabin, and playing with other children.
Okay.
Andrew Judge's indentured servitude ended in 1776, but he worked for the Washingtons until 1781. And he remained in that area of Mount Vernon until at least 1784. We know this because the Washingtons loaned him 12 pounds.
Oh, which would have been a substantial amount of money back in the day.
Yeah. So they had some sort of trust in him.
Yeah.
And while we don't know what Ona's relationship was like with her father, it's very obvious that she would have known him as a person at the very least.
Right.
Because she grew up with him around.
Exactly.
When Ona was 12, Martha brought her into the mansion house to begin her official training as a housemaid. In April 1789, sometimes they call her Oni, was one of 7 enslaved people of African descent brought to New York by the Washingtons to work in the presidential residence. And then they changed that to Philadelphia in 1790. It's in Philadelphia that Ona is able to experience so many new things because her world was just Mount Vernon growing up. So she gets to try new foods. She sees different forms of entertainment. There's record of her going to see acrobats that came to the city to perform. And she also met lots of new people and learned about different possibilities. She was Martha's preferred maid, and so she traveled with her everywhere.
Oh, wow.
Since Ona was, and so she knew like all the big names of the time, right? Mm-hmm. And since she would have been seen as an extension of Martha's status, we know that she was very well dressed all the time. She very frequently had new pairs of shoes purchased for her, whereas the other enslaved folks in the Philadelphia residence didn't have these purchases extended to them. And that's because they weren't like bopping around town with Martha.
Right.
And it's really important to keep in mind that Philadelphia was the center of abolitionism.
Ooh, yes, that I do work. Okay, that sounds familiar.
And at this time, they had a very a large for the time free Black community, and Ona makes friends amongst these folks, and here she's able to learn and absorb from their experiences and their beliefs. George Washington, you've heard of him.
I think I've heard of him before. That name rings a bell.
He's the guy with the funny ponytail in the quarter.
Thank you.
He recognized that slavery was unpopular in Philadelphia. He's a politician, right? He knows that he looks out of place. Doing this horrific thing. And he does begin to replace his enslaved staff in the presidential home, not in Mount Vernon, just in Philadelphia, with white German indentured servants as the people living in bondage pass away. if that someone dies, he's like, I'll get a German person to be my indentured servant instead.
Oh my god. It was all about optics. It's not
Yes.
even like he was like, oh.
Wait, this is terrible.
Right, like, whereas, like, John Adams is like, slavery is evil. And then
I love
George
John
Washington
Adams.
is like, well, but it makes me money, so...
So, yeah. And we know, I think I touch on this a little bit later. He would have grown up with this being the norm.
Yeah.
There's no evidence of him actually questioning the morality of slavery until the Revolutionary War. He's kind of like, wait a second. Is this bad? I don't know. And, but we do know for a fact that Martha was like, no, dude, this is chill.
Like, Martha's like, no, slavery's dope.
Yeah.
Wow.
She came from a very wealthy home. She brought with her when they married.
I know she was the rich one.
She was the rich one, and she brought with her a lot of enslaved people. So even though he seems to question it in private, not publicly, she does not.
Jeez.
Mm-hmm. It's very, very sad. Then March 21st, 1796 happens, which would have been very significant for our girl Ona, because this is when Eliza Custis and Thomas Law get married. Why is that significant, you ask?
Yes. Why is that significant, Stephanie?
Eliza Custis is Martha's granddaughter.
Okay.
And Martha
Oh, yeah.
tells Oni, oh my gosh, guess what? I'm giving you to Eliza as a wedding present.
Wow.
So you're leaving Philadelphia, you're leaving your family, you'll never go back to Mount Vernon unless you go with her when she's visiting. So later in life, once Ona's family passes away, she is interviewed twice by newspapers. And when one reporter asked her what prompted her to run away when she did, right? What was the specific timing? She's a teenager still. Ona replied that I was determined to never be her slave. That was in quotes. And this is referring to Eliza Custis. This is because Eliza had earned a reputation among the enslaved women that she owned for being highly volatile and erratic.
Oh.
Which is a really dangerous combination.
Yeah. And also, I think it's important to mention here, too, that, like, in 1796, that would be George Washington's president of the United States at this point.
He is president, yes.
Towards the end of his presidency.
Mm-hmm.
So he's powerful.
He's very powerful. He has a lot of resources.
Right.
And it's just, there's honestly, I feel like this almost doesn't need to be said, but I just want to say it. There's no excuse for what's going on here.
Yeah.
And you'll see as it continues, it's just so frustrating. So we can imagine she's not excited to be going with this, like, very unstable, terrible person.
Right. I don't blame her.
Yeah. On top of that, Thomas Law, the dude that Eliza is married to now, has a very bad reputation.
Jeez, double whammy.
He fathered 2 illegitimate children in India, and he's rumored to be very aggressive with women.
No.
And Ona is in a very scary position if she goes with them. She has literally no, like, they could do whatever they want to her, and she has no right to complain.
Right.
So at some point during this spring, before she's going to be gifted, this human being is going to be gifted, she makes contacts with members of the free black community, and she tells them what's going to happen, and they help facilitate her escape.
Oh, nice.
There are no records of how she did this, how it was coordinated.
Mm-hmm.
She didn't ever choose to comment on it.
That's probably smart.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Just in case, right? She kept everyone's names and things like that either secret, or she used, like, pseudonyms unless the person was white and deceased that helped her.
Right.
She didn't want anyone to come into harm's way, and she didn't want to prevent, she didn't
What
want
a
to,
sweet person.
I know, so thoughtful.
Yeah.
She didn't want to prevent anyone from getting help. But we know that it was on Saturday, May 21st, 1796, she slips out of the house while the Washingtons sit down for dinner.
Ooh.
And her friends in the free black community had already carried all of her belongings, like the ones that she was going to take, to the port. And they were waiting for her when she arrived on the docks, and she was good to go.
To the port?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
So she left Philadelphia, and once the Washingtons realized that she had escaped, they weren't happy. In fact, they were shocked.
Shocked. Oh my gosh. So this person who are holding here against her will, she ran away. Oh my goodness.
Why would she do that?
Why would she? Who would have thought?
Who would have thought? They believed that they had, and they went on record to say this, they're like, we treated her so well. Why would she leave?
God. That's like, you're just so out of touch at that point.
The irony, I wrote, the irony here physically hurts me. That they could not understand, like, why would she choose freedom? The thing that we fought for.
Right, I know. It's like, there's so many levels of irony there.
Yeah.
Oh.
In response to these sentiments, someone mentioned that they had said this when they interviewed her much later. She said, in quotes, that she did not want to always be a slave, and she knew that if she went back to Virginia, they would never give her a chance to escape.
Right. That, and they would never give her freedom, it sounds like.
Yeah.
And that's the thing, is like what a lot of people don't realize, like American slavery was particularly tough in the history of the world.
Yeah.
Like it was a big status symbol amongst Romans to free your slaves. Like it was like that was like the cool thing to do for centuries. And plus they had way more legal rights than enslaved people did in the 1800s.
Right. I know it's something that I get very frustrated with when you hear arguments of like, oh, humans always did this. Not race-based slavery, and not to this degree, and the level of abuse and, like you said, lack of rights that people had was just abhorrent. And they had told her, even with their stupid logic of like, but we're so nice to you. But you also told her you were going to send her somewhere where they're very not nice.
Exactly.
So,
yeah,
what?
I know. The only other, slave system that was around roughly this bad was probably the Spartan.
The Spartan one?
Yeah, it was particularly rough.
Why is that?
I don't want to derail the conversation, but they treated them like utter dirt. In fact, it was like they would go into the slave populations to kill the leaders every single year. Oh. There was a secret police, and ironically, we know very little about it within Spartan society. That would, they would go in, try to find the toughest leaders amongst the enslaved population. They're called helots.
Okay.
And just kill them.
Wow.
And try to do it covertly. It was like a game to them.
Oh.
It was really, really messed up. And
did other nations at the time look at this and be like, what?
Other Greek city-states, polises, what they're called, were disgusted by it. Like the Athenians had slaves. Don't get me wrong, but it wasn't to the extent of the Spartans. The Spartans had so many slaves, and two, they're mostly other Greeks, which the rest of the Greek world was like, that's weird. That's really weird.
Sparta was not the vibe.
Sparta was, I know, that's why the movie 300 still, it was a dope movie, but, it really gets my nerves because it's like, oh, we're fighting the Persians, who, one, weren't nearly as bad to their slaves as the Spartans were, and two, you weren't fighting for freedom, you're fighting for your, own selfish gain.
I've never seen the movie. That's the premise, is, they're fighting for their freedom?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Against, the evil tyranny of this empire.
We call BS here on History for Weirdos.
Yeah, major BS. But anyways, going back to Ona here.
Let me tell you what happens once they realize that she's left. They take out an ad, and the ad reads, and quote, absconded from the household of the President of the United States.
Oh my gosh.
Ona Judge, a light mulatto girl, much freckled, with very black eyes and bushy black hair. She is of middle stature, slender and delicate, about 20 years of age. She has many changes of good clothes of all sorts, but they are not sufficiently recollected to be described. And then the ad listed a $10, 10 pound, I guess.
I don't know, by this time it would have been $1.
Okay, $10 reward.
Wow. Which would have been probably a lot of money.
Yes. Yeah. Exactly. Sorry.
Yeah.
$10 would have been a lot of money. I'm shocked that they had the nerve to like put out an ad.
It's really disgusting because, like, you know, we're taught in schools that like George Washington is this paragon of virtue.
He's almost like a mythical figure.
Yeah, he's like, you know, probably how the Romans would have viewed Romulus or something, right? Like, and that's how we view. I mean, our capital is literally named after him, and this is such a POS move.
Yes, it really is, and you're right. He's supposed to represent the virtues of the United States. One of those being equal right to freedom.
I know, and it's like, dude, what?
I don't understand, honestly, and I don't think we could understand.
No.
And I'm grateful for that. But Ona later revealed that she escaped on a vessel commanded by Captain John Bowles, and she is using his actual name. He left Philadelphia to Portsmouth, New Hampshire. She stated, quote, "I never told his name till after he died. A few years since, lest they should punish him for bringing me away," end quote. So I, to my understanding, he was just a white captain that agreed to take her away. In Portsmouth, I think I'm saying that right. Portsmouth.
Yeah, Portsmouth. Whatever.
Sorry, people of Portsmouth.
Yeah.
She rented a room with a free African-American family, and she worked as a domestic servant. Then, in January of 1797, she marries a free man named Jack Staines, and they move in together, and they get their own home. He was a sailor. She continued doing domestic work, and they used their home to rent out to lodgers as well. Mm-hmm. So they had multiple streams of income. They were hustling to have a good life.
Oh, heck yeah.
George Washington made 2 known attempts to re-enslave Ona. First, while still in office, he sent a letter through the Secretary of the Treasury, Oliver Wolcott Jr., to Joseph Whipple, who was Portsmouth's collector of customs. So he uses his treasury person to be like, hey, talk to the local guy here. Whipple, the Portsmouth collector of customs, he was an abolitionist. But he owed his position to the Washington administration.
Right.
So he reluctantly agrees to help. He starts to spread word around just saying like, oh yeah, I'm looking for a housemaid, like a maidservant. You know anyone good? Eventually, he gets what he wants when Ona comes in for an interview. But Ona gets suspicious because he's not asking her normal interview questions like about her experience. He starts asking her questions that sound like he's trying to confirm her identity. Like, where were you born? What's your mom's name? Weird stuff.
Oh my gosh, yeah.
She gets uncomfortable and she just goes silent because she's so scared. She stops talking. And then in her silence, he confesses everything. He's like,
oh my gosh.
He's like, this is what's happening. George Washington contacted my boss. They asked me to get you. He tries to bargain with her. And he basically says, if you let me send you back to the Washingtons, I promise you that I will get them to agree to free you once they're both dead.
Bull.
How could you promise something like that?
Yeah, how... So you're going to convince the President of the United States.
Yeah.
Good luck.
And his wife.
And his wife, that's right, yeah.
Because she has quite a bit of say in the family.
Right.
So Ona agrees.
Oh, poor girl.
She tells him she needs to get some things together and that she'll meet him at the docks at night and she'll go back to Virginia.
My girl is not going to do it, is she?
He's stoked. And he's like, okay, go get your stuff. I'll meet you there. But then, much to his surprise, she never arrives at the docks.
Oh, so you don't say. So, you know, she's not going to willingly go back into slavery.
No.
Wow, what a shocker. What a shocker.
So smart. I was so glad she played it like that, where she was like, you know, she fought with him back and forth and then was like, okay, no, you're right. Like, there's no way I can get out of this. Yeah, let me just get my stuff. So then on October 4th, 1796, Whipple writes to his boss, Wolcott, These names are very funny.
Yeah. Walcott.
That he had failed to secure Ona. At this point, instead of getting a letter back from his boss, Walcott, he gets a letter from George Washington.
Oh my God.
And he's pissed. And he says to return her by force. That he shouldn't have. He's like, don't play nice, return her by force. Whipple actually responds by basically telling him, like, you know what, dude? I did what I could. This is your battle. I suggest you consult with, like, a lawyer.
Wow.
He says no.
Oh my God. Good. Finally, good for him.
Finally, some backbone.
Yeah, jeez.
So since Whipple isn't willing to help, Washington sends his wife's nephew, Burrell Bassett Jr., to get Ona. I had to say his name like that. Burrell Bassett Jr.
Burrell Bassett Jr.
Uh-huh. He does this because at this point, he knows that it's not looking good, that he's been looking for this girl. It's not good politically. So he wants his nephew to, like, keep it quiet. And he, again, tells him, you can take her by force. Like, I don't care. Do whatever you got to do.
Jeez Louise.
So Bassett, he's a very elite, rich, white Southern man, and he's like, oh, I totally got this. He's really used to getting his way, obviously. He's very used to black people obeying him, right? Mm-hmm. And once he arrives, he stays at the senator's house. It was Senator John Langdon. And he chose Senator John Langdon because he knew the Langdon family also had a history of slave ownership in the South. So he's like, oh, okay, they're going to be chill. Bassett tracks down Ona. And similarly, though, interesting, he tries to talk to her, and he lies to her, and he says, hey, they actually sent me down here because, like, they want to free you for real. But you just got to go to Virginia to do it. It's like the silly legal stuff. Like, you just have to come with me.
Oh, my God.
And she just looks at him, and she replies in quotes, I am free now, and I choose to remain so. And she, like, closes the door on him. He's pissed. Bassett goes back to the Langdons' home. He's very upset that she spoke to him that way. And then he's like, you know what? We're going to capture her tonight.
Oh,
We're going to take her from her home. At this point, I think she and her husband have their firstborn baby, who's about 1. But he didn't account for everything. Even though the Langdon family, for whatever reason, did not at least publicly consider themselves abolitionists, they had actually already freed everyone working for them in bondage and then offered to rehire anyone who wanted to stay for fair pay.
Oh my God, wow.
Yes. So their house was staffed by black staff, but they were all paid staff, and this guy didn't know that. Crazy. So Langdon, he's not down for this. He sends one of his staff to warn Ona and tells her to run.
Smart.
Mm-hmm. Like, so he's pretending, same thing. He's playing smart. He's like, yeah, dude, I'll help you. Yeah, we'll capture her. I got some guys that'll help you out. But he's letting her know, you got to go now. Like, you don't have time.
Yeah.
So she flees to Greenland, New Hampshire. Not Greenland, the country, but Greenland, New Hampshire. Where she is able to safely hide. This is the last known attempt at re-enslaving Ona. George Washington died shortly after in 1799.
Right.
And she stated that after his death, no one bothered her. Like, no, she never felt unsafe anymore.
Yeah, like, I mean, Martha maybe would have been a big drive, like, in the household, but she was still a woman at this time, right? Like,
exactly.
Like, the ex-president's dead. That's...
Yeah, you don't really have enough power.
Right.
So George Washington, as I mentioned, avoided the subject of slavery publicly as much as possible.
Yeah.
He believed it would tear the new fragile country apart. Which
He was right.
He's not wrong about that.
Right.
But it's definitely something worth tearing the country apart for. Upon his death, George Washington owned about 317 enslaved people. In his will, he ordered that those humans be freed after his wife's death. He said, once Martha's gone, just free everybody. However, that didn't pan out because technically Martha herself owned more than half of the staff. And she refused to free them. She let her grandkids, quote unquote, inherit these humans, and separated dozens of families in doing so.
Oh my God.
So only less than half of the 317 were eventually freed.
That's really disgusting.
There are some other notable people here that I'm going to do kind of like a sidebar on to just recognize them. Some enslaved people that were owned by the Washingtons. First is William Lee. He was known as Billy or Will Lee. He was enslaved by George Washington and served as his personal assistant. He was the only one of the Washington's enslaved workers who was freed immediately by Washington's will, because he served by Washington's side throughout the American Revolutionary War and was sometimes even depicted next to Washington in paintings. He was one of the most publicized, if not the most publicized, African Americans of his time.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah.
That's cool.
Upon his death, this guy's good to go. Hercules Posey was...
Oh my God, his name's Hercules?
It's a great name, right?
Great name.
Was an African-American enslaved man, serving as the family's head chef for many years. Ooh. First at
Okay, maybe that just like goes to show how much of like a fat ass I am.
Ooh, he can
I was
cook.
like, oh, but he's a chef. I apologize for everyone, including myself.
So he works for them first at Mount Vernon in Virginia, and then he goes with them to Philadelphia as well, and he works alongside Ona there.
Oh, okay, cool.
Sometime in 1797, he escapes.
Oh!
And he flees to New York, where he lives until his death in 1812. He was legally freed, technically, upon Washington's death. He was owned specifically by George Washington, not by Martha. But his children remained enslaved for the rest of their lives by Martha Washington and her family.
Oh my God.
Mm-hmm. Then we have Christopher Shields. He was a house servant, and his escape attempt was foiled by George Washington himself. 3 months later, this man was at his side when George Washington died.
Oh my God.
And then two more really quick. Deborah Squash and Harry Washington, obviously we see where Harry got his name, were enslaved by the Washingtons, and they both successfully fled as well. And they fled separately at separate times, but they each actually joined communities of free Black people in the U.S., and they formed their own communities in other countries. Yeah, one was, I can't remember. A really cold place. But there's just these communities of people that were like, screw this place, we're leaving. So this is quite a handful of people that were able to escape the Washington ownership.
Good. Anyone who gets liberty is always it's always a win.
Totally. So then back to Ona.
Yay, our girl.
Ona and Jack have 2 daughters and a son together. But unfortunately, Ona outlived her husband, and then eventually she does outlive all of her children.
No.
I know. I can't think of anything more painful. She became increasingly involved in her local church community as well as the abolitionist movement. In late 1845 and early 1846, Ona gave 2 interviews to abolitionist newspapers in New Hampshire, sharing her experience.
Wow, that would have been really incredible.
Incredible. You can read them. You can read the interviews. They're online. Ona passes away February 25th, 1848 in Greenland, New Hampshire. And while I'm not entirely sure of the logistics or legality of her status at the time, I believe it's important that we remember her as a free woman.
Oh, yeah, I love that. Absolutely. She definitely earned that.
She earned it. And that is the
story. Not that you actually have to earn it.
Oh, such a good point.
Right? But if you
She fought for it.
She fought for it, yeah.
That's a good point.
I want to make that exceptionally clear.
Mm-hmm. She fought for it, and she fought for the freedom of others.
That's really beautiful.
With her broken heart, she really put herself into the movement work there.
Right.
And did a lot of good. And sharing her story probably did give people so much hope.
Oh my God, I could only imagine.
And that is the story of Ona Judge.
Yay! Well, thank you.
Thank you.
Also, really, really random. But do you know Greenland is actually not a country? It's a possession of Denmark.
Oh, I didn't. Wow.
Yeah,
you
super
learn
random.
new things on this podcast every day.
Yeah, right?
So let me share my sources really quickly. WhiteHouseHistory.org / The Remarkable Story of Ona Judge.
Noise.
USHistory.org. The article was called The President's House in Philadelphia, and you can find actually a lot of great information, not just on Ona Judge, but on the other enslaved people who lived on Mount Vernon at mountvernon.org.
Oh, that's really amazing they do that.
They have these artist renderings of every single person's silhouette based on descriptions that they could find, like
hers.
Like hers.
Yeah.
You could see her silhouette there, and they try to really give a good, and I know this has been a more modern effort, but I think they try to give a very good holistic picture of what life was like at Mount Vernon and how different it was, obviously, for white people versus black people there.
Yeah, and I think it's important. Like, it's because it's
Very
history,
important.
right? Like, we want to know the truth,
Yeah.
not just some idealized version of it.
I know. Then that's such a great way of putting it. That's exactly why I wanted to share this story, even though it's challenging to think about. I don't want to live in the idealized version. I get why people are drawn to that.
Yeah, absolutely.
But I rather live in the real version of history and
Right.
be fully aware so we could do better.
Exactly. It's easier to live in the idealized, but it's not the right thing.
100%. Well, I talked a lot.
Yeah,
It's always hard when it's your week, isn't it? Like
it is.
But
I also second you in
Yes.
saying that it's better when it's not your week. Because I get to be here, listen to you tell a nice, it's a good story.
Yes.
And I just get to chime in with like random facts about Rome or ancient Sparta or Greenland.
It's so necessary.
I know, right?
It is so nice, though, when it's not your week and it's just story time, basically.
It really is. I mean, it doesn't matter if you're 3 or 30. Story time is incredible.
3 or 30, story time is incredible. 100%.
Ooh, we should put that on a shirt.
And then we each take turns wearing it depending on whose week it is to go.
Exactly.
I love it. Well, thank you so much, weirdos, for listening to another episode. Please check us out, as Andrew said, on Instagram. Let us know your thoughts. Rate, review, and subscribe. It helps the podcast continue to grow.
Exactly. Well, until next time, weirdos.
Until next time. Just as you were starting, I was about to cough. So hold on.
Cocoa Beach is your ultimate Florida beach vacation. Pack your bags and open your mind. Adventure is calling from Orlando's closest beach. Cocoa Beach is Florida's secret gem that's got it all. It's the budget-friendly, retro-cool destination that families and surfers adore. Come soak up the sun and ride the East Coast's most famous waves. Start planning your one-of-a-kind getaway now at visitspacecoast.com. That's visitspacecoast.com.
We all know a guy who only occasionally shaves for big occasions, and it's because that occasional shave really hurts. It's the time of year for big occasions, and yet there he is, suffering with that cheap drugstore razor. Let's help him out. Henson Shaving's line of razors, built with aerospace precision, deliver a smooth shave your dad, brother, and even son can enjoy, eventually. With replacement blades just 10 cents each, you'll buy it once, and they'll use it for life. How's that for the perfect gift? Celebrate with 100 free blades on your first purchase, and no subscription headaches. HensonShaving.com/holiday.